tools to check on how accurate it is, or, lead with question. I mean, there's just so many things that you can do.
But Andy announced yesterday, and I didn't know this could be done. Oh, YouTube is gone, so we'll be joining soon.
Okay, we could do this offline at some point, but it should make it should make all your work this fall easier.
Definitely, definitely.
So I'm going to sign my picture off because I may not be on during the actual show.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to the Zoom Test Kitchen. Good to see all of you. My name is David. Look at my shirt. And yeah, Frank, I know you've got all the swag, so just keep it to yourself. This is a big week. For those of you who did not see office hours yesterday, boy, did you miss out on some announcements. Robert has been sitting here in this Zoom room since yesterday morning, waiting to hear more about this. He's so excited. He's drooling. We all are. Just the little bit that Andy was able to show us was really fantastic yesterday. And today we have him here with us. And what's really fantastic for me about you coming here to the kitchen is not just the presentation you make, but the interaction that we're able to have, sort of a little more laid back and low key. So it's really awesome to have you here, Andy. Thanks for coming.
Well, thanks for having me back. It's great to see everybody. As always, I enjoy the format that we have here and this kind of special thing that's been put together and kept going for many years now. So I'm very appreciative of all of you for continuing to come together and be interested in these things. So it's exciting for me to be able to come in and tell you something else. So that's always
fun. Absolutely. And we should also all just sort of recognize, we all know how lucky we are to have Andy as a part of our lives, but to have Andy as a part of our lives this close to Zoomtopia is insane. So Zoomtopia is coming up. I just got another email about it today. I'm already registered, but they were reminding me, definitely check out Zoomtopia. And the reason is because Zoomtopia is one of the reasons is Zoomtopia is where you get to see all of these things being used in real life, being beaten on and really tested. It's just amazing. So Andy, I don't know, did you want to share your slide deck? And we can start there, and then I know we have a million questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and thank you again for mentioning Zoomtopia. One of the reasons that I'm coming here today versus next week is because I'll be in kind of the production run, getting everything together for that event. And so I wanted to come early and say, here are the things that are going to happen while I'm busy with this other stuff. And then let's check in after Zoomtopia and talk about how we used it for all those things. And of course, any of the announcements of Zoomtopia itself, because as David said, it's sort of two prongs, right? There's all the information, announcements, things that will take place about Zoom as a platform and the products that you all use. But then also the way that the event gets produced, we are using our own technology to make it to, come together and all that stuff. So with that, I if it's helpful, I can go through some of those visual references that we went at yesterday on the office hours show, just to recap them here, maybe get everybody kind of in the right headspace for some of your questions. And then
please do.
We can take it wherever you want to go from there. So we have September updates for our applications. And as I said, they're not shipping today. They're shipping in the future. I expect them to be available next week. I'm coming now to get ahead of it and tell you about them, but you should be able to download them next week because that's forward looking. I just flashing the safe harbor statement for a moment that while it's our expectation, it's not any kind of guarantee. So production tools, as you all know, ZoomOSC, ZoomISO, tiles, these applications work together to make a family of different tools and angles on production, if you will, trying to solve different problems. ZoomOSC giving you control of data, allowing you to tie Zoom into third-party systems, scripting environments, stream decks, button pads, whatever it is you want to do there. ZoomISO giving you the individual HD video and audio streams from Zoom and letting you export them to professional production protocols and downstream third-party systems. And then Tiles, our new tool for being able to take multiple different video feeds from Zoom, compose them into something with logic and controls and styles that fit your event, and then export that into your production system. So what's new? So starting with ZoomOSC, we're introducing control of polls via the OSC API. So you'll be able to manage polls and interact with the data related to those polls programmatically. And this could be great for centralizing control across multiple different webinars, or possibly even interacting with the data and doing something based off of those results and how your audience is engaged. So we're really excited about that. This was something that's been heavily requested as polls and surveys have developed at Zoom. We have now kind of built out on the OSC side the ability to tie that into production. Anything you can do to engage your audience and tie it into the production is much appreciated, I think, by everybody watching, because it rewards their participation. So this will be another great way to get engaged with them. On the ZoomISO side, I'm looking at Robert specifically right now to see if I can get that smile to go between both ears exactly. We've introduced interpretation audio. Yeah, there he is. We've introduced multi-track interpretation audio. So not only can you export an interpreter like you can listen to an interpreter in Zoom, you can actually export all of them in the meeting at the same time and assign them to the different channels of a multi-channel audio device. So as you know, in ZoomISO Advanced Audio, you pick any of the audio devices, Loopback, Dante, virtual sound card. You can do audio hijack related interfaces. You can do Black Hole, Soundflower. Like there are so many different, any multi-channel audio device you can install on your system, ZoomISO can see. And now you can feed each of its channels with different interpretation audio, just like you've been able to do with different types of meeting audio or shared audio. What's nice about this is that it's deeply tied into the interpretation system in such a way that you're actually selecting languages instead of people. So you can assign multiple people to a language channel. They can hand off between each other, and you don't have to touch anything in ZoomISO. It's going to listen to the audio of that group channel. You can also do customized languages. So Zoom supports, I think, 9 default languages, and then you can have additional languages that you define in the web portal, and I can actually show you in the web portal how you do that. And I think you can have up to 25 of them if you do that. And so you have your 9 default and your 25 custom, and that can become quite a list, and ZoomISO can listen to all of those. You can define them ahead of time. You can define them in the meeting. ZoomISO will see all of those changes. We'll be able to pull from those changes and export those to third-party systems. We've also, on the subject of audio, we've improved the quality of ZoomISO's audio output. So as you know, if you have original sound in high fidelity music mode, or you're streaming music into a meeting, and you look at your audio sending statistics in Zoom, you'll see that there's a couple different, 24, 16, and 32 and 48K audio shown there in the statistics. ZoomISO used to be capped at 32. So everything would be kind of converted either up or down to 32 and export to the third party there. But now that we have the 48 option in Zoom, we've moved everything up to the 48. So that'll have more audio fidelity for those participants who use those high quality audio profiles in Zoom. Now, if they're not using it, don't worry. We'll still convert up to the 48K, but the whole app has been kind of reclocked at the 48K audio. And that's available both in advanced audio and in the embedded audio output. So if you're sending NDI with embedded audio to vMix or something like that, that audio will now be at the 48K. That's helpful because in the past, we've had to introduce a toggle for picking between 32 and 48K for NDI because there were some devices that didn't support 32K and only supported 48K. Now the whole app is moving to 48K. We didn't see any devices that only supported 32 and not 48, but we did see some devices that only supported 48. So the whole app's moving to that now. And then unique speaker. So you've had this for a little while on advanced audio. You had a version of this in video in the last release. Now we've upgraded it to complete the workflow and take it a step further. So when you're working with video, previously we would go to video loss mode when the active speaker would take over as one of the outputs that you had before. And that wasn't really helpful. So now what we're doing is we're holding on the last person who was assigned to this channel when the speaker takes back over. So just to put this in perspective, let's say you have David and Robert, and they're going to be your panelists and presenters for the whole presentation. Then you're going to open it up for Q&A, and you want to grab on output 3, the person who's asking the question. Well, you could go and type into the participant management tool and search for them and assign them manually to that output, but that takes time. And if they just, call on them in the meeting as the host, and then you got, a very narrow window of time to go find them, grab them, put them on the output before you got to cut to them, right? So that's not fun. If you do active speaker, it will work when they start talking, but then when one of your other presenters start talking, it will duplicate them. So what unique speaker will do is it will show the person who's active speaker, and then when one of your other outputs starts speaking again, it will hold that output on the person who was already there while those other people who are duplicated are speaking, and therefore it won't advance and duplicate that person. But then if it goes to another audience member, it will rotate for them. So it's a set it and forget it workflow. It's a wild card that will dodge any of the other outputs that you have and hold on the last thing that it did have in the video world.
Andy, how is that different than what you all shipped in the previous, I guess what may be considered the beta version of this unique speaker?
So in unique speaker, we introduced it for audio and video, but in audio, what we have is just don't send any more audio when you are dealing with one of your other video presenters. In video, you still have to send something. So it used to be that it would just go to nothing, just like audio. Now it can go to the last thing that it was using and hold on that. So rather than getting a freeze frame or a test card or a black, video frame coming through on the video side, because the audio is easy. So you don't send any new audio there. But on the video side, you still should be sending the last person so they can be there nodding and smiling and responding to the other presenter. So that's the change that's being introduced there. Then on tiles, so probably one of the number one feature request that we've gotten on tiles since we introduced the beta earlier in the summer was to put the name tags on the actual outputs so that the people who are presenting can actually look at somebody and call on them and engage them directly. We took it a step further. We said, all right, we could just take the little black semi-transparent pill shape that Zoom uses and the default font that Zoom uses and stick that there at the default size. But in the spirit of what the application does, we actually give you a full editor suite. So now you're picking the fonts and the size and the positioning and the alignment and your color for the background and what do you want it semi-transparent and how rounded should the corners be. And you can really make this tied into the design of the tile overall versus this sticker that's kind of sticking on top of it. And then we took it even further and we expanded that to a full set of reactions. So in a meeting, right, I can raise my hand, I can use an emoji, I can submit feedback as well. So the feedbacks are like, speed up, slow down, right? These things, yes and no are also helpful. So you can imagine now, I could do something like I could make this large, yes or no icon on my tile. And then my presenter could ask the audience a question and quickly see red and green pop up on all the tiles to identify, how people are reacting to the question that they asked, for example. Or you could see who's got their hand raised and then call them out by name to, ask them to participate in the conversation on voice or something like that. So we're really excited about this, and it really fits in the spirit of the application to design it into the whole system. So we're really thinking that that's going to have some great use. So for large events where you need either a very high resolution display, multiple displays, or you're going to have a ton of participants and one computer can't cut it. If you had previously 2 instances of tiles, you might have duplicate participants because the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing and they didn't know how to avoid having duplicates between each other. So what we've done here, I think, is actually very clever. And we've created an ordered list of the participants that every instance of this application will agree on. So it's not alphabetical. It's a little more complicated than that. But basically, we take the unique identifier for the participant and we convert it into a number, and then we order that list of numbers so that the 2 computers actually don't have to engage in any kind of, network communication with each other. They're all just using the same reference list and slicing it and saying, I'm going to take the first third. This computer is going to take the second third. This computer is going to take the tail third. And that way you're guaranteed to have no duplicates across your multiple displays. So if you need to parallelize the compute, you need to parallelize the displays, you need to, or just have a ton of participants for whatever reason you need to do that. You can now use multiple instances of the app together and they won't step on each other in terms of having duplicates across the displays.
So if it's not you don't have to, it's not computer based because multiple computers can do it. It must be meeting based. Yes. The information, the data. So the list that you're creating is per meeting. That's probably an obvious.
Yeah. It's a list of the participants in the meeting. Now, if somebody joins or leaves, the way that the list is ordered, everybody will agree on how to change the list because it's like if you can imagine it was sorted alphabetically. Everybody agrees on the alphabet. So if somebody leaves and somebody joins, we all agree where they're supposed to go in this list without having to talk to each other about it.
Where does that list live? Is it just in the cloud?
Well, it's a list of participants in the meeting. So every participant has a unique identifier, and every instance of the app can read that list of how many people are in the meeting, who they are from this identifier perspective, and then it can sort the list that way. Yeah. But as an end user, you don't even see any of this interact. You don't know about any of this. You're just picking, I want to manage people 1 to 30, 31 to 60, or we actually have a built-in calculator where you can say, I'm going to use 3 computers and I'm computer 1 and I'm computer 2 and I'm computer 3, and then it will split it up for you. Support for Blackmagic desktop video products. So Deck Link, Ultra Studio Monitor, these can connect up via Thunderbolt enclosures in the case of a PCI Express card, or over a Thunderbolt cable directly if it's something like the Ultra Studio Monitor. And this can get you dedicated hardware outputs from the software via SDI, or in the case of the Ultra Studio Monitor, you can even output to HDMI. And that's nice as it's not a system display, but it doesn't have to be NDI as well. As we said, we're taking the outputs from ZoomISO and moving them over this way over time. We did NDI in the last update. Now we're doing SDI. So those are all the headliners. There's a lot more. These change logs are going to be extremely long, so there'll be plenty for you to dig into when the time comes to read them. But that's the high level. I'm happy to go into more detail on any of the specifics. I have the pre-release versions of some of these installed, so we can talk about some of those things as well if we want to get hands-on with it. But David, I'll let you kind of take it from here in terms of how we want to go about the Q&A.
Well, I mean, okay, here they go, the hands. There they go. First of all, congratulations.
No, thank you.
Most importantly, I mean, congratulations. Well, I'll let other people go. Let's do Andre. I have a list. I was taking notes. Andre and Robert, then we'll come back. Go ahead, Andre.
Cool. Hey, Andy, great news, pretty cool updates. Two questions. The unique speaker, does it refer to the outputs that I set, the different outputs that I set, and only excludes the, let's say, 3 pin speakers to the first 3 outputs? Or how is I didn't get the point how it stays on one. But actually, if another speaker takes the active speaker, how does it like exclude the other ones?
Yeah, so let's actually take a look at the user interface for this together. I think that might explain it more. So inside of ZoomISO, and I apologize if the font's a little small, we can define a number of outputs here. Let's make 3 of them. And we can set them to different modes. So here I'll expand this a little bit. And let's say the first 2 are going to be participants. And you can imagine if I was, dialed into a meeting, I would pick the participants that I want them to be from the selection drop-down menu.
Yeah,
so we'll leave those first 2 on participant, and we'll set the third to unique speaker. So what's going to happen now is unique speaker is going to be like active speaker, except if the active speaker becomes one of the 2 people that are on our other outputs, it just won't update. It won't go to the next person. So it will stay on the person who was there. So you're guaranteed that output 3 will never be the same person as 1 or 2, but it will still automatically update based on the person who's speaking.
Okay, I understood. This is pretty gross. Very good. We had this discussion on Discord yesterday about the punching in a hole into a tiles layout. Maybe as a feature request, you could define an area of the display where you want to have no tiles. Only as something, but
yeah,
great
definitely
updates.
Hear you on
pretty
that one.
cool.
I think that would be a great enhancement, especially for those who use tiles and ISO together. The one thing that you can do today with it, it's not going to be in the center, but is something that you can think about. Is if we go to our designer, we could create a left aligned, for example, padding, maybe even more dramatic than that. And now I can. In the app, I've defined a safe region that's, left or right aligned. Now, of course, having a space in the center would be helpful. Today, we only have 2 layout modes, scaled to fit and fixed tile size. But I think that, getting the interface for this right would be the key. It is not maybe the hardest technical challenge, though, to do. So that's something we'd like to take a look at for sure.
I was actually thinking about this last night, and the combination of tiles with unique speaker, that's just gold right there.
Well, you need one more thing for that to work. So you need unique speaker, you need tiles, but then you need the new feature that we also have in tiles, exclude the active speaker from my display. Because now you could have them, in this group, but you could also have them on the tiles side. And now you can actually exclude them as well. So, but now we can do it because we also did that. So all of these things work together now to make that possible.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Robert, go for it.
Andy, I haven't slept since yesterday after I heard this news.
Oh, no.
For the interpretation, I was so happy just trying to figure out some how to move forward with all of my workflows. But first of all, I'd like to thank you and the whole of your team, because I know I've been bugging you guys a lot and there's been a lot of talk, and I know you've been working very hard. So thank you to you and the whole of your team. But just so that I can express my joy, if I had a meeting where I had 8 languages, I had a stack of 8 Mac Minis to get each language channel out and then into the headsets for people to listen to. That's going to disappear now.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just as simple as that. That's going to disappear because I just have one running ZoomISO just to get the interpretation languages out, and then I go into all of the equipment that is distributing the signals to the headsets of the people in the conference. Brilliant. It's so unbelievably brilliant. And I just can't show my appreciation. But what was my question? I don't have a question. I just wanted to show my appreciation for
That's
Well,
fantastic.
maybe
what
we
you've
could take
done.
as I know you know this, and so I'm going to be preaching to the choir here. But maybe for those who are not familiar with setting up interpretation in Zoom, we could take a second and look how it sets up, so that we can then show it how it's going to work in ZoomISO. So I'll jump into a screen share on this and show you just in the meeting scheduler flow how this happens, and then we can open that meeting and take a look at how it goes. So here I am in my schedule portal. And at the bottom, I have this interpretation option to enable language interpretation. When I do this, I can now put in the email addresses of different interpreters that I want and specify what language they will listen to and what language they will be speaking. And I can create a number of these different interpreters and assign them ahead of time. The good news is I don't have to do this if I don't know who exactly I'm going to get. We can still change this when we get into the meeting. If somebody, gets sick, has to tag out for somebody else, they log in, you can make that change on the fly. But if you want to set it up ahead of time, make everything easy, when you join right away, it's done. You can do that here in the web portal. Now, the languages, Zoom has 9 default languages in this list. You can customize additional languages, and then I believe you can contact support and get even more customized languages. So we've got our default 9, but as I keep scrolling on this list, they become programming languages because I ran out of creative ideas. There's Klingon in the list there. So we just keep going. And so you can have quite a few of these. If the 9 default languages in Zoom don't do what you need, you can do more of those as well. So then when I open this meeting...
Can I just jump in on one thing,
Please.
Andy? That actually the first language you choose is not the language you listen to. You listen to what's on the floor on the main meeting. Yeah. The 2 languages there are the language combination that the interpreter gets. So that he'll be, when someone's speaking, for example, in English, in this case over here, then the interpreter will be interpreting into the selected language on the right-hand side. However, if someone's speaking in that language, the interpreter will be speaking back in English. So there's actually 2 channels that are set up.
Right. And I misspoke on that, but that's, exactly. It's, and you can't really see it here, but there's this little icon showing the 2 arrows that's right there that, kind of communicates some of that as well. And you can also flip them with that. So you set that up, and then what's going to happen in ZoomISO in advanced audio. So let's go over to the advanced audio tab, and let me pick a device that has a bunch of channels. So here's my 16 channel black hole device. We have these modes, and you have the mix of the whole meeting, or you have follow a video output, or you have give me the participant by their name. You have a mix of all the outputs. You have a mix of all the things you're not outputting. You have the active screen share audio. You have the unique speaker like we just discussed. And now we have the new one, interpretation. So when you set interpretation, this selection icon will have a drop-down menu that's similar to the graphic that I showed before in the slide deck, where instead of being people, it is going to be languages that we defined in either the meeting or back in the web portal. And you will be able to pick that language, and the audio will route to that output channel. And like I said, there can be multiple participants in these channels, likely because they're going to tag off. I suppose there could be other reasons for that too, but you will grab a sum of all the audio in that channel, which means you don't have to touch anything when they hand off. ZoomISO just listens to the channels, gives you the individual channels, and you don't have to change it any further. So yeah, that's how that works. Andy, did you have a question on that?
I don't necessarily have a question, but I was wondering if maybe there'd be a possibility at some point to do like a comms channel. So if you're doing a production where you had a comms channel, but not allow people assign people to that channel so that not everyone can just join it.
Yeah, so that's the disadvantage, right? So when we do behind the scenes shows at Zoom, sometimes we will do that. We will open up a comms channel because we're actually cool with everybody listening in on our comms to see how the show is made. And so that's the cases where we've done that. We haven't, as you said, the issue with this is that you can't prevent somebody from listening to a certain channel. So if it's especially with comms, where you don't want the customer listening in on necessarily all of that, you want to lock that down. Now, this can be helpful though if you just need a basic way of organizing a production meeting. So if it's a back office meeting already, and the people who are going into that meeting are all fine, like if you would give them the walkie-talkie and they could set it to any channel they wanted to, they could join a production meeting. You could pump the meeting audio into that as the viewing, for all the back office folks. And then they could self-organize into, audio groups using the interpretation feature. I should say abusing the interpretation feature to do that. And you could do it that way if you wanted to. Andre, you've got your hand. Yeah.
Yeah. One question regarding the language pairs. Robert, did I get you right that you have to set up 2 pairs to get like, for example, I have English and German on an event, then I have to do one interpreter's pairing or two. I didn't exactly get the point what you meant before.
An interpreter usually interprets from his native language into a second language, a third or a fourth. So he'll always select one of the language that he's interpreting into. So that's the combination he puts in there. So I would be doing, for example, English, Polish, Polish, English. If you were to come on and you were an interpreter, we'd probably share the English channel because we both speak English, yeah. But you'd be doing English German. So when anyone's speaking English, you'd be interpreting on the German channel, I'd be interpreting on the Polish channel. However, if someone's speaking German, you'd be interpreting on the English channel. I would listen to your interpretation and then interpret onto the Polish channel. So I'd relay it across.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
And then I think, Robert, you also mentioned that there was a case where sometimes you have like a mezzanine interpreter who's just there for the purpose of doing relay between two other interpreters who don't have a common language. Is that right? So sometimes you'll have somebody in there to be the middleman, so to speak.
Yeah, that will happen sometimes. However, from a quality point of view in interpretation, you lose about 30% once you go through a relay. So when you've gone through those steps, what you get, it's like
it's
when we were kids, it's a broken telephone.
Yeah.
What do you get at the end of the line?
Yeah. So anyway, this is a really well built out side of the house over at Zoom. And so now I'm excited that we've bridged all that work that's been taking place over years with production, because now you can just tap into all that work and get it out in the production protocols without a stack of computers. Yeah.
And just one more thing. I don't think people who haven't used the interpretation module appreciate the interpretation module, because if you look at any of the other platforms, not to name them, only WebEx has an interface just like Zoom does for the interpreters. None of the other platforms do. You have to use a third-party piece of software for the interpreters, then route that into the interpretation channels on the platform. So it's only Zoom and WebEx that have that interpreter interface, which is really brilliant.
Right. And our goal as we continue to try to differentiate now is to say, well, in these complex audio environments where interpretation is being used, and as you see the increased prevalence of hybrid activations, where you want to have those interpreters be remotely instead of having to fly them out on site, or for whatever the purposes is, right? It could be a completely in-person event and you just are going to have the remote interpreters to save money on that side of the house, right? Or it could be something that's truly hybrid and the Zoom audience needs the interpreters via the Zoom feature. Nothing needs to change for them. But then the people on site are going to benefit from the Zoom interpreters as well because ZoomISO is in the equation. So by marrying with the production protocols, which is, I think very unique to the Zoom side of the house, we're hoping to have value multiplied across the entire feature.
Yeah, and the other thing that I don't think we appreciate fully with ZoomISO coming in with the interpretation available over ZoomISO is that when we have multi-session conferences where you've got interpreters doing parallel sessions, this is where we're going to be able to use Zoom as the platform just for interpretation, because we can take everything out. Previously, we had to have this stack of equipment in every single room for each and every session. It was a nightmare, a real nightmare to manage. There were more people than there was equipment.
Yeah, it's
can I ask?
Scale well.
While we're talking about interpretation, Robert, can I actually ask you a question? Yesterday, Alex asked you, Andy, what I thought was a really interesting question about the use of AI in translation, in interpretation, and that maybe there are a certain number of channels that would be the main channels. I think there were 6. He said that the UN uses 6 main languages or what have you, and then that other languages where only a few people use those languages may be interpreted by AI. What's your sense, Robert, about whether that's in the future even possible?
Well, I don't believe the UN will do that because they are so specific in the.
I don't mean the UN. I mean for us. I was just using that as an example.
I'll give you a good example. If we interpret for a company in Switzerland, now in Switzerland you have German, you have Italian, you have French, and then you have Swiss as a language. So you've got really 4 languages in one country. However, if you look at the demographics, the more south you go, the less the people are. And what we do in those events is we'd usually have people doing the interpretation for the top 2 languages, and then using either transcripts or transcripts, captions, translated captions. That's it. We wouldn't go any further. It's just not feasible from a financial point of view. So yes, he does have a point in that. Can AI do it? Well, depends. Do you call the AI translated captions from Zoom AI translated captions, or are they just translated captions? Then let me tell you that the translated captions from Zoom are brilliant. I mean, you've got to take it from me, because this is what we do. We sit and watch these things every single day. They are brilliant. The only catch with them is that it'll start translating, and then if it realizes it's got the context wrong, it sort of goes back and then rewrites the sentence. Yeah? So it's clever enough to realize that it's done it wrong, but you get that sort of backward motion and then coming forward again. But I'm sure that will change in time, because either they'll buffer it, or because you can't preempt what's going to be said. You have to buffer it and let it out later.
The other challenge, David, is audio synthesis, right? So in the case of the text translation, like that's running in real time, I mean, close to real time. Now, if you have to go do that, and then you have to have a voice synthesizer on top of that turns it back into sound. So now you don't want to have so much delay between the original, and now you've stacked 3 different AI things, in a trench coat, like it's trying to get into an R-rated movie at the movie theater. Now it's going to take way too long to get out the other end, right?
Gotcha.
And I'll tell you one more thing, just one more thing, if I can just finish up on this. The challenge in interpretation is interpreting a person who is speaking a language that is not his native language. And you usually have to have a person to be able to do that. The AI models at the moment aren't clever enough to realize that what that person is pronouncing wrong means something different. And there's a classical example that a lot of people talk about, and I'm not going to use the word because we'd get banned. But if you think of how a Frenchman would say the word focus, AI would just get the wrong word in there by definition. Yeah?
Fascinating. Hasmukh, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, this discussion has just dropped a big valuable penny for me. I think I'll have to have a masterclass with Robert on multiple languages, because in my country we have 11 official languages, and the largest part of development is just being able to communicate in languages that the various stakeholders can understand. So this has just opened up a big possibility for me, even in my medical events, because right now we are organizing language sessions for doctors to speak the dominant languages in their area. Now this suddenly just opens up a whole new world. So, I mean, Andy, I didn't even know I needed your update, but clearly with your update is going to make it a lot easier for Robert to teach me how to do that.
Yeah, there we go. It's all about that, right? And I think Hasmukh, you make a good point that depending on who you talk to, and especially where you're talking to people, when you ask them what the #1 challenges that they have about production are, the answers vary a lot by region. And so when I go to US-based conferences, interpretation's on the list, but it's like 6 or 7. When I go to Europe or to the Middle East, let me tell you, that is the #1 item by a mile, right? And so it just depends on the different stylistic choices and considerations that, and a lot of it just has to do with simple geography, right? And then how things ended up working out in different places. And it is really surprising. So, I think in the US, people are kind of maybe more ho-hum about this feature, but for everybody I've talked to from overseas, they're like, this is the pivotal feature that they needed to have ZoomISO add value to the workflow, even more than getting the speakers, right? Because there's fewer speakers sometimes than there are interpreters. So the interpretation feature actually matters more to some people than the traditional video pipeline that ZoomISO can offer them. And it gives them value for events where everybody's on site except for the interpreters. So that I think is going to be really exciting.
Go ahead, Robert, please.
It, and because we're all producers over here, you've got to take the financial aspect into consideration. If you take organizing an event using Zoom with all of the other apps that go with it to make it a good production flow, you can raise the cost of that production by 30% by adding the first interpretation language, an additional 20% for each additional language. So there is a huge potential for us producers here to use this tool. Now, and I'm saying this, and I'm not afraid that I'm going to lose any business, because there are dedicated platforms for just interpretation that cost an arm and a leg. We can do it as a completely integrated production event using Zoom with ZoomISO. And we'll be cheaper than that market price, but our rates will be higher than the rates that we're getting now. And we need to keep that in mind. This is what we're here for the business.
Right. Jason, please.
Hey, Andy, how's it going? I saw last night, and I don't want to get into politics in any way, but I saw clips from the campaign rally, the virtual rally that was done in suburban Detroit yesterday, that was in a hybrid auditorium with lots of people coming in remotely. And I can't imagine that was done any other way than with Zoom and Zoom Tiles and ZoomISO or some variation of that. I was wondering if you had any insight on that, whether you saw any clips from that and what you thought about their implementation.
I'm going to have to be careful on this one, and I apologize in advance. I did see it. I am aware of how it was done. I am not able to share how it was done at this point. But I think it was an excellent implementation of a lot of the things that I talked about that morning on office hours. And I can't tell you how they did it or what they did, but I don't think it's coincidental that I was on office hours in that morning talking about features that you then saw something that looked kind of similar that night.
Sorry, what was this for those of us who didn't see it and may want to check it out?
Oprah led a political rally
with
for
Harris.
the Harris
Okay.
campaign, and yeah,
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I have a question for you about OSC and ISO. So you said something yesterday that I have known for years since these came out, but it just struck me differently. You talked about how OSC is built into ISO and that you really don't need OSC as a standalone app. You could just use ISO. So I have sort of two questions. The first one is, should I just be using ZoomISO? I mean, I don't need the ISO functionality. I'm really just using the OSC functionality. But if I'm choosing an app, should I just be using the ISO app? The second question is can you imagine, not is there, I'm not asking you to think forward, but can you imagine a time when OSC functionality, in the same way that it's built into ISO, is also built into tiles? So we could do control of tiles. And then the third question is, if OSC is built into all these other apps, does OSC really need to exist as a standalone app?
Sure. So there's a couple layers to that. The first is the technical requirements that are needed to run the apps. So OSC, for example, works on Intel-based Macs. ISO doesn't. So for those who have older machines that are still, receiving supported software updates from Apple, we'd like to be able to offer that to them, because there isn't a technical reason why it would need to be restricted. We can write one code base for that application and just compile out a separate ZoomOSC. And we'd like to continue to offer that as a value proposition. Also, the licensing prices, if you're buying device-based licenses, are different between the applications. So OSC, when we first introduced it, it was $35 a month, and it's all the way down to $19 a month now for device-based license, which I think is really compelling. And for those who don't need the ISO functionality, because remember, you only get all the OSC functionality if you get up to the ISO Pro, which is significantly more expensive. So there is a cost component. Now, if you're purchasing via the Zoom Events platform, it doesn't matter, because that is going to activate the Pro version of all the applications. It's not going to make as much of a difference. But if you're licensing on a device-based basis, that actually may be a component to think about. On the technical side, and you can probably experience this via using our application, so I don't think I'm divulging anything that you wouldn't otherwise be able to deduce. OSC and ISO are very similar. And that's because they're the same code base. Stylistically, Tiles looks completely different from ISO, and actually looks more similar to the Zoom Cuts UI, which is because we built our more modern applications post-acquisition in the Swift UI frameworks. there's a lot of modernization that's taken place in the interface and flows of those applications as compared to the what we were able to do in 2020 with OSC, and then what would become ZoomISO later there, which is built on some older interface frameworks, still very modern video and data processing pipeline frameworks, but the interfaces are very different and hard to converge without some significant effort. So I'm not saying never. I think that there could be reasons, especially to see ISO and tiles working together in a production pipeline where you have some of the interface and audio controls that you get from ISO working with the compositing system that tiles has. I think there's intersectional value there. But first, what I want to do, I think from a prioritization perspective, because we always have to think about that, is work on adding new capabilities to the mix and then focus on how to whittle it down and plug things in together to make it more seamless. I'd rather give people the option to do the thing they want to do today with a more, app per feature kind of paradigm. I think that there are, 4 paradigms to the production side. There is control, there is the individual audio and video, there is the group composited audio video, and then there's graphics. So I think there's these pillars, and right now the applications kind of have their own lanes for those things, and we'll continue to develop out in those verticals.
How heavy is OSC as an app? I mean, ISO I get, but OSC feels like it's not much of.
OSC is pretty lightweight. The challenge with OSC is trying to make sure that it scales really well as the attendee size gets enormous. So that's, because it's reporting all this data on all these things. So if you ever, tied into Bitfocus Companion and had all the OSC traffic going as fast as possible, and you're subscribed to all the data, and you jump 1,000 people into a meeting and your buttons aren't updating, well, OSC is trying to tell them all the things, and then they have to process all the things about all that stuff, and we have to get the callbacks from the server. So that's the challenging side. It's not like you're going to see your CPU spike, but like one thread on your CPU is going to flip and be maxed out and limit the app.
And do you imagine a time when the beauty about tiles is that it really is set it and forget it. You kind of set it up and you don't have to worry about it. Do you see a need? Let me change my question then. Do you see a need for OSC type control in an app like tiles?
So one of the things that we do that is, I think, unique about tiles is that the moderation pipeline that is used by tiles involves this concept of a queue, where we take and we say, the people that you have to focus on are your people on screen and the people coming up next. You don't necessarily have to worry about that big backlog of people who aren't visible to anybody else. I mean, you might still need to do that, and we do have tabs and filters where you can go and find them and deal with them if you need to. But if you're going to block somebody from going on stage, you can wait until they're coming up next and then hit them there and focus your attention just on the group of people that you need to keep an eye on. Tiles is so visual, and to try to abstract that over an API is going to be challenging, because is it more valuable to you? Like with OSC, right? When I can put the names of people on the key and spotlight them with a button press, their identity is the only thing I care about. With tiles, because it's a visual tool, the quality of their image and like the way that they show, unless we were streaming videos to all these keys, I don't know that it would be as useful to make moderation decisions about them without that. So for that purpose, I think we've built a very bespoke UI, whereas the ISO UI, take it or leave it, right? It's more of a, it's there for you if you don't want to tie in a third-party tool, but if you want to work with the Stream Deck, I think it makes a lot of sense. I think it's less of, I'm not saying never, but I think it's less of a priority for the application, because what you're doing with it really involves keeping an eye on them. And if you're already looking at that screen, having a button that's right there on that thing you're looking at that you just tap and manage it and confirm that it did what you wanted seems to be the right way to go to start for this app.
I have more questions, but if other people do also, please put them up there. So you just held up your Stream Deck, and I'm wondering if you can imagine any ways that Zoom, that ISO and OSC may integrate with the new Buttons app from Bitfocus.
Yeah. So the way that Buttons works is that it takes in all the modules that were developed open source for Companion, and it makes them available in an interface that is specialized for the Buttons device, or for the Stream Deck Studio device. So I believe you can configure it in the Corsair default software. You can configure it with Companion like you can today, and that continues to be free and open source. And then you can buy a subscription to the new Buttons software, which has additional features for customizing how you're managing those features on the Studio device, but has access to all the modules that were made available in Companion. And therefore, because we over the past several years have invested in building in a robust Companion implementation with folks like Richard Williamson and Ash Green, and then we did some work with Jeffrey Davis, of course, and then now Justin James, and of course influenced by the community that we've worked within. All of that history of development applies to this new device as well, via Companion and via buttons. And so I think I don't know too much about how to make the decision between whether the Companion implementation is good enough for what you need to do for Zoom related tasks versus what buttons offers you. I just haven't had the time to really dig into that part of it yet, but I don't think there's any blockers per se on using any of the work that you would do with, a Stream Deck that you would hold in your hand versus one that you would rack mount. So my understanding is that it's pretty much plug and play. They've built upon all this work that's taken place over the Companion project and use that to try to push into this new market for Corsair, really.
Awesome. You mentioned the voting, the yes/no voting, and on tiles, which is very cool. When you mentioned it, I opened up my reactions thing, and I feel like those need some love. This may be a silly question, but they're smaller, they're underneath, I don't know what's going on with those 5. I don't even know what the coffee thing is. Like what's
away. Yeah. So this is
what's going on with those.
So if you hit I'm away, so there's a couple things that have actually changed with this in 6. So go ahead and hit I'm away for a second on your side, just so you can see the interface. You'll now see it says I'm back. So I can get up and walk away. And then when I come back and hit I'm back, it will disappear that icon. And so if I have my video off or whatever, people can know whether, like, maybe I just have my camera off and I'm still engaged.
Oh, if your camera's off, that stays there. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it does. And then Be Right Back is a different feature where Be Right Back will actually shut down your camera and mute you, and then unmute you and turn your camera back on when you get back. So they're similar but different in that way.
I didn't even know those did something.
Yeah, so it's like raise hand, where like raise hand, which is next door, has it has a lot of different things that it does. It puts the hand up. It will lower the hand when you stop speaking automatically, or you can hit a button to do that. You can hook onto that with a bunch of different things. It rearranges the gallery view, all that stuff. Your core reactions can actually play with animations now, so that's cool. And then you have send with effect, which actually burns the emoji into the video stream. So there's a lot going on with this area now. But the feedbacks, the thing that I see them used most for is for a basic type of engagement polling, particularly in EDU. So when we look at education, people are like, "Oh, I'm not following along. I need help." The teacher can quickly look at the participant list and see who's feeling what, about different things. They can survey without setting up a poll and waiting for everybody to respond to the poll. They can just get some quick, pulse feedback from the audience, and work with it there. So representing that in tiles allows us to put that in front of the presenters who might not be in front of the Zoom interface.
Yeah, it's just, I guess the reason I'm asking is that the two voting ones, the yes, no, I don't know. They just, I don't know. I maybe it's that, no, I've never seen anyone use them. And part of me feels like that's because no one knows that they're there. Because emojis,
right? Getting the word out on that for sure, I think, is something we can always do more and more. But I've seen this used a lot in education. I'm aware of several customers who this is how they do the question, rather than saying like raise your hand if they do hit yes or no if based on your preference on something. And it's lightweight compared to a survey. It's less of an intrusion compared to raise hand, and it's just something they can click and be done with.
Huh. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep.
What else have you guys got for them? Wait, what time is it? We have like 10 more minutes. Jason, go ahead.
I have a quick question about multi-channel in-room audio. Is there any mechanism through either Zoom Rooms, the standalone client, or ZoomISO to intake individual channels from different participants for purposes of doing things like camera recognition or transcription or anything like that?
Okay, so yeah, a couple different ways to answer that one. I'll answer the question directly, and then I'll tell you what I think the better way is to do this. So yes, you can have up to 8 microphone devices on a Zoom room that can come in over Dante and will be mixed together by that Zoom room. So if you're passing out handhelds and they're Dante enabled handheld microphones. They can all be paired with Dante controller to the Zoom room directly and come right back in. And that can be a great way of getting multiple audio sources back in without needing a DSP. We're not a replacement for a DSP. If you need to do any kind of processing, any kind of, more advanced stuff, yeah, put that mixer in the middle there, put something in there to manage the room audio. But if you just need, kind of run and gun basic setup, you can pull up to 8 different channels of Dante audio into the Zoom room together, and it will mix it into the microphone. However, we now have features in Zoom rooms that help you with this case, particularly for speaker identification. So we have something called speaker tags, name tags that will identify participants and put a little name strap under them so that they're recognized.
People actually in the room.
In the room.
It's
and then in
so
the transcript, when that person speaks, it attributes that this person by name said that word or that sentence or whatever. So it will deobfuscate. You used to today say, oh, the Zoom room said this. Well, the Zoom room didn't say anything, but somebody in the room did, right? And now we have the ability to recognize the different speakers in the room, identify them by name, and attribute their sentences, their contributions to them in the transcript as an artifact. So rather than you having to assign all that ahead of time with your audio routing, you can actually have a mixed audio feed coming into the Zoom room, and it will deal with this for you.
How? By looking at the camera movements, or
so
I'm really confused.
There are a few different features that dovetail with a few different things between, and some of them are audio based and some of them are video based, and it depends on how your room is set up. But the feature that I tested the other day, I actually used it in 2 different rooms. One room had a single camera and a single microphone, and there were 4 people, myself included, sitting around the table, and 2 people on the other side, and we all had attribution in the transcript. And then there's another feature I think that will actually do the step past that, where we'll actually put an identifier on the video feed. And I did that in a multi-camera room. So I think it depends on how the room is set up, but there's documentation on Zoom rooms for, you're looking for speaker tags or smart name tags, I believe is the feature name. I might have some of those words confused, but that's I think what you're looking for.
Okay, but if I'm interested in capturing the isolated audio in the back end of Zoom for each of those speakers, I can run it into a board, do the digital signal processing, pass them out as virtual microphones into Zoom rooms, and I don't have to worry about mix minus or anything like that for the participants in the room, because it would get recorded and then blended out.
Depends on how you set up the DSP, and you want to make sure that you keep whatever you do here. You want to keep the latency down so that our automatic mix minus can actually be effective. If the slap back is too long, it might duplicate in that sense. But if you're actually doing a true mix minus, then it should be fine.
Can we let's I want to go back to tiles for a moment. Again, this came up yesterday about editing the actual names. For now, changing the names that you bring up in tiles, you would just change the Zoom username.
That's right.
And it will
the Zoom username.
Right. And so if you just change the Zoom username, it will automatically update the right.
That's right. The case that Alex was talking about is both for his Mukana app and then for like Fontainebleau's Obvio, they will actually put a prefix code or a postfix code after those names to identify them for the benefit of the production backend system. I've also seen some production agencies do this to help sort the participant list. And they'll have like emojis or different things that are in there in the front to make it easier to find people and sort through people. And you wouldn't want that to be necessarily displayed on your production graphic. So the request was, can I trim the top or tail of that name tag by a certain number of characters to handle that case? It's not something that we considered because we were kind of focusing with our name tags the way they're intended to be used in Zoom. But I think that there's enough people doing it that way that it's worth considering for the future. But it won't be in next week's release.
It's an interesting option. And I guess you could argue the flip side, or another way to address that would be to allow for some hidden value on the Zoom side. So, I could, you know, if it's sort of like actually like host and co-host, right? When I co-host someone, their name doesn't change,
Yeah.
but on the back end, they have a different tag, as it were, that gives them different permissions.
There are a few features like that, even for something that's not like functional, so to speak, like setting your pronouns. They're not part of your Zoom name, but they are appended in the UI.
Interesting.
So that can help with, you know, in the transcript, right? It's not as long or whatever. Yeah.
Amazing. Folks, what else do we have for him? Otherwise, we'll let him go. It's Friday. He needs to get ready for the weekend. And Jason's not letting you leave.
It's all good. I got some time.
Go ahead, Jason.
I wonder if instead of appending, you could put those codes or something like that under title or somewhere else in the system so that the name tags wouldn't be interrupted, but the back-end systems would still be able to locate it. That might be another fix for that issue.
The reason that there are two reasons that people are doing this. One is that they want to basically change the way that Zoom sorts the participant list by putting characters in front to change the alphabetical order. The other reason is that that's going to have to be tied to the structure of the name to change the alphabetical sorting of the name.
Right.
The other reason that they do it is that they pull the username from a tool like ZoomOSC, and then they do analytics on that name to identify the break character and then take the code. And ZoomOSC is reading the actual name tag, the name strap, I should say. So if we introduced in Zoom a more complex, you know, identity management system like we have with the contact card, where you can hover over somebody and see all these details, and people wanted to reuse that, we could do it that way. But I think that the challenge today is that these special codes are for compatibility with third-party systems that aren't directly integrated into Zoom, but are using ZoomOSC as the middleman to piggyback the rest of the integration. And ZoomOSC reports on the name, so that's why they're doing it that way. Yep.
So then changing that would presumably break ZoomOSC.
Well, it would just mean that they wouldn't get the data, right? So
Right.
if we introduced a new feature that said put your random characters here, it wouldn't resort the participant list, and it wouldn't help the people who are doing it by the name. So I'm worried that, you know, that wouldn't necessarily add something for those purposes. The better way to do that is to adopt our SDKs and APIs, or for me to trim the characters and tiles, which might be easier for everybody.
Robert, Andre, and Hasmuk.
I'm going to move wish and move to translated captions. Andy, you
I'm
mentioned
shocked.
something yesterday.
I'm shocked that you're moving us there. Go ahead.
You mentioned something in SARS yesterday about using OSC to capture the translated captions and then you being able to format them and send them out. Can you just talk through that? Because the concept is really attractive. I just don't understand what that means.
Yes. In fact, I have a photo, I believe, that actually shows it. But we've talked about it, I think, during a breakdown of how we did Zoomtopia last year. But there was this this thing that we did where we had in-room screens that were showing the translated captions, the live translated captions in French and German. And so you could sit in certain rows in the room at Zoomtopia, and you would see this screen, and you'd be able to read it in your language. And then we also had so it was like two TVs next to each other. You have one TV that had the split view of the two languages, and then you had the sign language interpreter over screen coming in over Zoom on the second display. So you had, you know, three different types of access to understanding the event across these two screens. And the thing that was cool about it was that the fonts and graphics and styling was all customized into the theme of the event. And the way that we do this is that via ZoomOSC, you can actually extract the text of the live transcript, even the translated transcript. So you can grab that via OSC, and it has all the hooks for, like, when we go back and revise a sentence, we have a special indicator that says, hey, we're making a revision, or we're adding a word, or we're removing a word. And so then we took a downstream system, just doing a simple, you know, JavaScript application that listened to that OSC traffic and displayed it with customized HTML, CSS that matched the branding of the event. And then we output that on a display. You do need one computer for each language that you're going to do this for with ZoomOSC, because now we're talking about ZoomOSC. Basically, the client of ZoomOSC has to join the meeting and be set to look at those translated captions. We don't let you get captioning for multiple languages simultaneously via a single client. So you will need to do that for one of each of those. But you could also run multiple copies of ZoomOSC on the same system and get them that way. This is not as heavy of a process as trying to do that with ZoomISO. So what we actually did is we just ran 3 copies of ZoomOSC, grabbed 3 different languages, and output them via different ports to our app and identified them that way.
Yeah. I'll tell you why I'm asking, because there are certain situations where you have to have the accuracy of the translated captions very high. And at the moment, our workflow is we will actually look at the Zoom translated captions, and an interpreter who's listening will verify that they're correct. And then a third person will type them in and throw them out through the captions so we can stream it. Now, there's a delay of over 30 seconds on that, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
But if we can get the translated captions, and you say we have the hooks for redoing, we can actually capture all of that and put out a very clean translated caption feed.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
You can do that.
That someone is overseeing and saying, stop, change this to that, and then we just continue. Perfect. Thank you.
And I'll see if I can find that picture. I'm looking around on my computer to see if I can show you what it ended up looking like at the end, because I do think it ended up adding a lot of value to the event, that people could sit in a certain place and get the benefits of Zoom's AI and accessibility features while being in the room. So I
did see it, Andy, I must admit, but I didn't understand what you had done to get it.
Yeah, it was pretty clever. I thought it worked out pretty well. Yeah.
Andre, go for it.
My question is maybe very related and also refers to yesterday's show. I thought you said that you can grab, for example, with Companion, the name tags of the participants and use them as a lower third or as a variable to make a lower third out of it. Is this kind of the same approach like with the captioning?
Oh, so there were 2 questions yesterday that may be related to that. One was the new feature in tiles that follows the name and creates an actual lower third on the tile. The other one was somebody asked me about how to do a lower third for a participant in a way that didn't involve doing the graphic in the production system. And the way I recommended that they do that was using the SPX graphics app. So that's Tuomo's app. It's a Zoom app that you can get from the Zoom app marketplace, and it will create a graphic overlay on the participant's feed with certain customizable parameters. And it's, relatively easy to use compared to like professional graphics tools, because it's designed to be, something that an attendee can operate for themselves and manage there. So that was my recommendation for that use case. And by the way, I did end up finding this graphic, so I'll just share. I sat out in the house during Zoomtopia to see this, how this would go. So you got some heads in front of it, but you can kind of get the sense of it is that that's like the Zoom font. There's a customized graphic at the top. It's a different language on the left versus on the right, and it's split down in the center. And I'll see if I can find a clearer version of that. But yeah, that was the idea.
Hasmuk.
Yeah, mine is a very non-technical, anecdotal thing I need to share with you, Andy. We can become quite blasé because we've had quite a few interactions with you. And I hired a audio engineer who I'm teaching now video. So he's been diving into ZoomISO and Companion and now Tiles about 2 weeks ago as well. I asked him to watch yesterday's recording of Office Hours, and he came to me this morning and he said, I can't believe you know these people. How do you know these people? And he was just gobsmacked that the tools he's been working with for the last 3-4 weeks, and now suddenly the author of these tools is in the show and I'm asking questions. So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank you for sharing your time with us, and both in Office Hours and now as well. So a big thank you.
Yeah, no, happy to do it. And I appreciate all the feedback that we get from folks, in this community who have requested things over the years, and we've been able to make, real improvements to the product line based on the conversations that take place. So for me, I don't even think of it so much as a service as I do, hey, I'm going to go do this thing so I can get good ideas that I can go and add to the application. So I really have no problem doing this, and I'm happy to do it. And I'll echo that for the rest of the team. You see me, you see Jonathan from time to time as well. But there's actually quite a few people who I've worked with for many years who keep a lower profile, but are still very engaged with the conversations that take place in the community. And and they appreciate every time somebody says something nice about things, because, from some of their perspective, right, they're always getting the next thing, the next thing, the next thing. And I get to have the privilege of coming and sitting here with you and hearing somebody amazing like Hosmuk say thank you for being here. And I try to pass that on to them as well, because I think that I'm a stand-in for a group of people that are really caring a lot about this problem. I've cared about it for many years, and they like to be, more behind the scenes, but we all work together to make these things happen. So it's a team effort, and the team does a great job in bringing these things to life. And I'm happy to be here to talk about them with you.
So he's not able to talk about it, but I was able to find a screen grab as the video actually from last night. For those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, this is from the Oprah and Kamala Harris interview or discussion, and I have literally zero insight into how this is working. All I know is that Andy built it. I'm just guessing. I mean, look at the implementation. If this is tiles, and again, I really don't know, but I mean, the way they're stacked so they get smaller toward the back so that it looks like people are sitting for. It's brilliant. And then you've got the speak. It's just so beautiful. You can find the whole video, again, non-political, just to appreciate the tools that, like Hosmuk said, how amazing is that we have access to the same tools that Oprah has, or similar tools. Again, not knowing if they're the same.
Shout out to the design agency on this. They have brought a lot to the table with, like, getting the brick to come around the main. There's so many fine details that have been added in the vision, and doing it in the round was also, I think, added a lot, because and now I'm speaking just as like an observer of this event. I also thought Oprah did a great job as an MC, tossing to the virtual, making sure that they were engaged and playing with the fact that she was in the round. Because when you have a traditional stage setup, right, and you're in like a kind of a proscenium setting or something like that, the audience is in one place and the cameras are usually above or behind or in the back. When you're in the round, it's a lot easier to get all the angles, and it's also easier for the production to get the camera sights on the center and get those nice over the shoulder shots like you had there with the chairs and then the participant up on screen and the people that you're viewing there, right? So you can get all these nice angles from doing it in the round. So shout out to the agency that did this, because they really it's a very impressive design. It's really well done.
This would be a really lovely thing for office hours to kind of take apart, because I think you're right, that a lot of really interesting, beautiful choices here. Lois and Jason have their hands up again. If you're cool to hang for a few more minutes.
Yeah, I'm good.
So Andy, thank you for everything you do. Having said that, where is the best way to send that kind of a message to the folks who make the stuff at Zoom? I mean, if there's something that Zoom does that is really nice and I really appreciate it, what's the best way to get that, other than emailing you and asking you to figure out who to tell?
Cookies and milk. Send them cookies and milk.
Exactly.
No, there's too many lactose intolerant people in the world. No.
So there are a couple ways that I think are effective. Also, so some people say they only discover the feedback feature when they have something to complain about, but the feedback, about something that's working is actually just as valuable, because it validates that, let's say 1,000 people are using a feature, and 999 of them love the feature exactly the way it is, but the one person who doesn't like it puts in the ticket saying they don't like the feature. How do we know that they are the extreme minority on that if it weren't for the fact that we have customers coming back and telling us that they like it? So submit feedback for things you like so they don't change. So that the people who maybe represent a smaller group, who don't like them as much, we can have some sense of proportionality to how the customer base as a whole, or how certain segments of the customer base feel about it. Because when you submit that feedback request as well, we can look at your account and see, okay, kind of what major demographic, area are we talking about here from a use case perspective? What kind of license are we talking about, right? And that can help us understand how to tailor features for different groups of people as well. The other option is social media. If you're on LinkedIn or something like that, and you want to give Zoom a shout out with a screenshot of something you really like that helped you, the team does monitor that. They do pass the word back to the product teams and engineers who work on those things when they see it out in the wild like that. So I think engaging on social and tagging Zoom and saying, "Hey, Zoom, great job on this. Really appreciate it." they, Zoom might even write you back. So, but that does actually get filed internally as a good job to people who worked on that.
And what kind of cookies do you like?
I don't think I've ever been known to turn a cookie away. I'll put it like that.
Thank you.
But by the
Thank
way,
you.
just a fleeting thought before I throw it to Jason. I still have that image of the Oprah thing up on my screen, and it just dawned on me. We've talked here so much about security within Zoom, and how do you keep your meetings secure. I mean, the security that if they were using Zoom or whatever platform they were using, the security that they must have had people monitoring almost every single video feed to make sure that someone didn't throw something up. It's what a massive undertaking to have all those
I
video
think the
feeds.
day will come when a case study can be done on either this event or something like this event, and then breaking down how this is done, I think will be very fascinating. I think even though, like you said, if you write Alex and say, hey, I want to break this down or whatever, that then you could do that from a production side as a third party observer. But that's one of the key things, right? And that's why built right into Tiles. Here's a may or may not be a non sequitur. Built into Tiles is an entire moderation pipeline, like I said, so that you can see the people who are coming up, you can block them, you can favorite them, you can lock them into certain positions. And we built those features specifically for this type of workflow where it matters, that the people who are there are representing what you want them to represent and the way you want them to represent it. And I think that's really hard to do with just putting the gallery view on screen. And now you got to go right click stop video, and that's going to happen on screen when you go open that menu, or you got to go to the participant list and do it. And that can be hard. And there's nice things too that you can do in Tiles, like you can let their video still be on, but it's not going to the screen. And if they fix whatever the issue was later, you can just go unblock them because you can still see them in the app and the audience can't.
Yeah.
Right? So you have that curation layer in the middle. So I think all these things work together to make it nice. And the queue is nice too, because maybe there are a lot of people in the meeting, but not a lot of spaces to put them on screen, especially in a layout like that where you've only got so much real estate to show people, and there might be more. We have this queue rotation feature that can flip a tile or scale and fade a tile or cut a tile to a different person to give some airtime to different folks. You can't really do that with a screen scrape with a Zoom gallery view unless you go and click the next page, and that moves everybody, and it's a very distracting moment that doesn't really mesh with the design of your event necessarily because it's a user interface.
So just so people can just so that everyone knows, so this is Tiles which is in this meeting, and my fat head's in the way, but if let me move that. You can see that I can see my moderation can all happen right down here, because I can block someone, I can star them, I can say definitely keep them in there. And
you can look at those left-hand lists as well. So if you block me, for example, you can go get me back from the blocked list and put me back, and you can still see me. So now you flip me out for Robert, but if you go to blocked, you'll find that my video is there, and you can unblock me.
So interesting. By the way, the reason Tony was blocked is because for the beginning of the meeting he had his video off, and so I didn't want that showing up in the.
But suggestion: just don't turn on include non-video participants in galleries.
No. He had his video on. It was just a black screen.
Oh, with a black screen. Okay.
Right. Right. But there's a built-in way to do that here. I mean,
and like I said, we've expanded the number of filters in the upcoming release to include active speakers. So if you wanted to have the active speaker on ISO and not repeated in the gallery on the other side, right when that person starts speaking, they'll flip to a different person. You'll get them in ISO, and then you can cut to that.
It's amazing. Jason and Robert.
I just wanted to start by saying I can't imagine how much fun this has been for you, Andy, to start out as someone who, was looking in at the candy store from the outside with the rest of us, building tools, that really made a difference, and then getting to go behind the curtain and get to work with the raw code and the developers to build these tools. I want to share other people's comments and just saying thank you for what you do. With regard to the Oprah Harris event, I would imagine if folks tuned into Office Hours Live tomorrow, which will not be recorded, there may be some expert speculation as to how these things were done that might be entertaining. And the last thing I wanted to say is, as we close out, is there anything you wish you had been asked, or things that fall right on the line of things that you're allowed to talk about that are super exciting? I know everybody should tune into Zoomtopia,
Yes.
where they'll be breaking even more news, but give us one more nugget on the way out, Andy. That would be awesome.
Sure. So I've got a session on October 9th at Zoomtopia talking about Zoom Spaces, where I'll be sharing the next steps for what we have been calling our Pro AV initiative for Zoom Rooms. I'll be sharing more specific details and some examples and some timelines. So I would definitely check in on that. It's in the Zoom Spaces session. It's going to be kind of the major discussion point for that session. So I'll be there, and I'll see you there. And I'm really looking forward to that part of the story, which we are, again, just for those who maybe not are following this chapter of the journey, what we've done is we've taken a lot of the work that we've done in ZoomISO and we've put it into the appliance form factor with Zoom Rooms, which allows it to be more easily deployed in enterprise context, allows it to be available on Windows for those who care about that. It allows you to do quite a few more things in the Zoom Room environment versus in the downloadable application on a Mac environment. So I think that's going to open up a lot of doors, and Zoom Rooms is very interesting for reasons that we discussed earlier in this meeting in terms of how it can manage some of those hybrid spaces where you've got more things going on. And there's other things that you can do there as well. Yeah.
All right, Robert and Lois, and then I'm cutting us off.
Okay, thank you. Andy, I'm going to have a request for you. Because we're a production group here, I do 80% of my events on other people's licenses because I'm in the corporate world. I don't use my own license. And one of the barriers or the challenges that we have with doing that is they won't give me host. I need something that will say that I'm the production host, something that will give me a lot of the rights to do things in a meeting that I can't do as a co-host, for example. I can't do anything with interpretation as a co-host. Only the host can do that. Yeah. So that's a request. I'm asking.
Can I ask you a question about that request? How many people at once should have that ability? Like, is it just one account from your team, or do you actually have multiple people who need to have separate functions, but they need some things that are host level that aren't at co-host? I'm just curious what you think.
I would say it's one person, and then breaking it down lower is with the co-host that comes within built-in Zoom at this stage. Yeah, I haven't really thought it through, but I know we've talked a lot about different functions and different roles, but I don't want to get into that. But this is something that personally I get hit on the head with every time I go in to try and do an event, prepare myself, do a practice session. You just can't get in if you're not within the organization.
Yeah. And the reason I ask about that is that for a feature like that, just to give you some behind the curtains, the first question I would be asked if I went and proposed that is, does it need syncing across everybody who needs to be able to set that setting, right? And does it need, state sync, right? So one of the things that because the host is only one person, a lot of the things that they can do are built in a way that expects that only one person is going to be doing those things. So if there are now multiple people who need to be able to simultaneously orchestrate some of those features, that should be spelled out in the requirements so that nobody gets surprised, right? That, so that's why I ask these things. Yeah.
Okay, and the only reason I bring, you sort of when you said that people, you look at feedback and then put the demographics, looking at the customer's account. If you look at my account, I don't have 80% of the events that I manage on my account because they're on customer accounts. Yeah.
Well, yeah, sorry. What I mean by that is the license holder, and then I know that you will do work for those larger groups, and then associating in the ticket that you do that work for those other groups, or that those groups report back to us that they have engaged these other groups. That helps us kind of weave the whole web together. So it's not always automatic. But for example, if we know that certain features are really popular with pro customers versus business customers, that can make certain, decisions for us. But it certainly is the case that production, I think uniquely, there is this very common case where you have these guests that are coming in and helping and assist with the account. And that's why the Zoom Events Hub is built the way it is, right? You can have co-editors on the hub that are from another organization that are participating for a short period of time to manage that. You can have, hub hosts and who are, coming into the account from different divisions across the company, right? And they're not necessarily associated with the IT admin account. Zoom Events has tried to structure it in that way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Of course. I think Lois, you've got the last hand.
I've got the last hand. I wanted to compliment your visual looks. You know, we talk a lot, or we used to talk a lot in office hours about what lighting, what camera, what microphone, and you've got it really dialed in nice today, Andy. I mean,
Well, thank you.
the blurry background and the sharp focus, and yeah, very nice. So, any tips for us?
Well, I'll tell you. So I just moved from a place that so I've been in San Francisco for a couple of years, but I was down the street in an apartment I was renting where I had limited ability to modify the space to really customize it. So I kind of set up a couple of things and then let it be. When I bought my house, what I did is I kind of said this room is going to be the space and I'm going to really have control of it. So the first thing I did is I painted the walls to this gray color that picks up, especially at night, a lot of the color from other lights in the room. So I can help really control the character of it quite a bit by adjusting the lighting. The camera I'm using is a used ZV-E10 from Sony, and I got it because of the autofocus, which is really fast. And I need to refine this because as an Italian, I talk with my hands a lot, and then my focus is constantly bouncing when I'm trying to explain a concept. And Sony has a feature that will actually connect it to the eye. So long as I don't move my head in and out too much, it will ignore my hands. But right now, it just takes the closest object that I put on screen, and it locks focus to that pretty quickly. And so to accommodate that, I have a lens with autofocus, and that also has a short depth of field when it's opened up like it is here. So those have worked together. I did not spend a lot of money on this. I will tell you that the ZV-E10 running off of a dummy battery with the back opened up so that it can keep cool has been my daily driver webcam for months at this point, and I've had no issues with it overheating during a meeting. And this is a very warm office, so I'm very happy with that. The secret to the back wall, and apologies to those who have heard this story before, and I've already revealed my magic trick, is that this is a video feed from outside my house that is coming into 3 TVs that are sitting in portrait orientation with fake window molding put in between them and fake curtains. And that allows me to customize content on this display. But right now it's playing a 24-hour video that I recorded of a clear day in San Francisco without the fog. And it plays that every day at midnight and it loops it. So my time of day syncs up. But now that the days are getting shorter in North America, I have to go re-record it because it'll still be plenty bright out there and dark out the window. So I appreciate that. Microphone is a Heil PR40 going into a Motu M2. I have Zoom's personalized audio isolation profile set because I get very uncomfortable with in-ear monitors during a day that consists of, oftentimes 18 hours of back-to-back meetings. Having in-ears can be a little intense. So using a personalized audio isolation ducks all the noise in the room, allows me to work with open speakers where I'm more comfortable. And Frank, is that one of the Motus? Look at that. Look at him right there. Yeah, just like I got on my desk. It's been trusty for me. But I also used, just on a Zoom tip, that device has, I believe, 8 channels of input when you connect it over USB, and inputs 3 to 8 are loop out of the audio that is coming from the device by default, unless you configure this. So when you use Zoom's feature to customize audio channels, setting this to channels 1 and 2 is a good move, because otherwise Zoom's cancellation is constantly attacking that virtual input device from the Motu, trying to cancel out all the speaker sound that's coming in, even if you're wearing in-ears. I forgot to do that yesterday on office hours. So if you listen to me during the show, I'm wearing in-ear monitors, but it's doing noise cancellation when other people are speaking, because inside of the Motu there's a cross and the output is going into the input. And I just fixed that this morning. Because I listened back to it, I'm like, that's not right. I'm wearing in-ears. Why is it doing that? But I like the personalized audio isolation profile. You read a paragraph of text, and then it will customize the noise reduction to your voice print. And that I think has added a lot of value. So cool. Well, have we done it? Have we gotten through all of there are no unknowns about Zoom at this point?
I think we now know everything there is to know. And you should all visit zoomtopia.com. Where you can see all the different offerings that are here. One of the ones that I'm very excited about is, wait, I just had it. Where did it go? Because it's...
Oh, there's the behind the scenes.
Yeah.
I'm going to be speaking with Jonathan at that one. Yeah, we're still...
Yeah.
We're still planning that.
I can't find it now.
Because we haven't done the event yet. So how do we do that? How do we plan the behind the scenes and how it all went? We haven't done it.
Right,
Yet.
right.
That's been a unique challenge in the prep process for that one.
That's so funny. Yeah, you can't yet build your schedule, but you can see all of the, I can't find it right now, it's somewhere in here, but you can get information about it and who's teaching what. And
the other thing you can do is you can look at the speakers, right? And you could sort by speaker. So you could look for me and you could find, for example, all the things that I'm speaking at. So look at right above where you're typing.
Yep.
You can go to speakers and then you can click on any of these people and you can see where they're going to be during the event at any time. So
let's
I should be on
find.
Here yeah, there I am. I'm right in front of you.
There you are.
Yeah.
Hey, was client innovation, head of client, was that a new position created with you in mind, like for you?
I was promoted last year to that new role. Yeah.
But that's a new role that didn't exist before you.
I guess not. Technically I'm a senior engineering manager on the client team. That is kind of my level. But they
Cool.
gave me a fancy title for it.
So we got Crafting Zoomtopia on the 9th, and then later that day, oh my goodness, back to back, almost.
Yeah.
And then from the lobby to the
5
boardroom.
minutes.
Yeah.
Gonna keep the
Awesome.
questions light on the Crafting Zoomtopia one.
Andy, so grateful for your time.
Oh, my pleasure. It's great
just
to see everybody.
wishing you a
I'm excited
lovely
to see what
weekend.
you all do with it. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to seeing when we put these out there, how next Friday's show goes. I'll be watching from the wings when I can as we're getting set up, and excited to see what everybody does.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, my friend, have a lovely weekend. We'll talk to you soon.
Same to all of you. Take care,
All right.
and thanks.
Yes.
Bye-bye.
We are going to stick around and continue and talk about whatever there is to talk about in the Zoom world. That was pretty cool. That was
amazing, David. Well done.
Yeah.
Good job.
It stuns it. I forget who it was. Someone said it, but it stuns me that we know him. that we know people like him. That we know people. I mean, we're people like him, but still, I'm a little starstruck. And seeing the reason I asked about if that position was created for him is because I think he really changed Zoom as a company. I mean, he really came in and said, we need to empower people to use this tool to create their own experiences. And that's what he did. It's just amazing. All right.
David, just one
Yes.
one comment.
Yeah,
The fact that
please.
we claim that we know Andy is one thing, but the fact that he wants to come and speak with us
You're
is
right.
amazing. Yeah,
That's
it's
true
just-
also.
Yeah. I got a lot of
and
people, a long list of people that I know.
And there's no begging on my part. He reached out to me and said, hey, can I pop by? Yes. Yes.
That's great. And maybe another thing from the office hours community, a colleague of mine used Stage Timer the other day and had a question because something wasn't working like expected. And I said, hey, let me write a message to Lucas. Maybe he'll fix it. And actually, Lucas found it was an error and he will correct it next week. And there was actually another error that I didn't find that he found as well. So that's really the power of the community. I love this so much.
That's great. That's great. You know, I think the same way about Justin, who built the companion module. Same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's just amazing. Lois, if you don't mind holding on for just a moment, because we have a question from YouTube. Mike, what do we got over there?
There we go. Sure, it's from Tommy Wallace. He's asking us, does Zoom use my recording for AI?
So Zoom has a lot of AI built in, both in transcriptions and in companion AI. If you happen to look at the Zoomtopia website, it is, I don't want to say it's all AI because it's not, but it is just chock full of AI. In fact, the tagline is not the tagline, but just underneath the big Zoomtopia, it says register and learn how to work happy with Zoom AI Companion. So does Zoom use this stuff. Frank, do you know?
Yeah, that's why I put my hand up. It's kind of an odd question the way it's phrased, so I'll just dance around it a bit. Zoom's got a very extensive support article about this. They do not train their LLM on your meetings or recordings. Zoom AI is also turned off by default, so you have to actually enable it if you want to use it. But if you give me a few minutes, I'll find the link and put it in the chat.
Thank you so much. Hasmukh.
Yeah, maybe mine. I don't know if there were others before me, like Lewis.
I'm sorry, were you addressing the AI question? Okay, so bear with me if you don't mind. We'll get that. Thank you, Frank. Frank's going to see if he can find that article for us. But bottom line is, it does not for its own training. It will use it for your use with AI functionality, but not for its own training. Robert, are you okay if I jump back to Lois before we come over to you? All right, Lois.
Okay, well, this is sort of from the sublime to the ridiculous. Really strange question here. Assuming someone has a meeting going and they have turned off or they've turned on hide non-video participants, so they're seeing only pictures in the gallery, they're not seeing the rest of it. And someone who is not got their video on raises their hand. Are they going to show up to the person who, the host who has hidden that stuff, or the person who has hidden that stuff, or are they not going to? Does it flash on the screen in the upper left corner like normal, or does something else happen? And so I was thinking about this the other day and decided that if I wanted to participate, but I didn't want my face showing, I would put on a virtual background and then I'd take my trusty little camera hider and you wouldn't see me, but I wouldn't be a non-video participant. So anybody got ideas on how that works, whether it works?
It's a great question. I also keep hide non-video participants turned on, so they are hidden for me. And it has happened more than once that a non-video participant has their hand raised and I don't see them in my gallery view, which means I miss them. You do see their hand raised over in your participant panel. But does someone else want to jump? John, did you want to, or Robert?
Well, John has actually got his camera off and his hand raised. And if you switch, if you tag hide non-video participants, you won't see John.
Interesting. Because people like John Idelson, who has his camera off, I don't see in my gallery.
No, not John Idelson, John Drinkwater.
No. But what I'm saying is both John Idelson and John Drinkwater have their camera off. John Idelson I don't see, but John Drinkwater I do. So I guess you're right. He pops into the gallery view when he raises his hand, even though his camera's off.
No, he doesn't. If you've got high
Do you see me now
non-video
in the
participants,
gallery view?
Yes, I can see you now, Andre. Not see you,
And
but
did you
I
see
see
me?
your.
Did you see me appear and disappear because I raised and lowered the hand
Go
a
ahead
few
and lower
times?
your hand again. Yes, now you're
And
gone.
I
from me.
mute. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thanks.
yeah, but
So
David,
when-
do you have hide non-video participants?
Yes, that's what we're. Yeah, that's exactly what we're. So when you have hide non-video participants, I don't see any of the non-video participants right now. If they raise their hand, they do pop into my gallery view.
What? I'm toggling it back and forward, and people are coming and disappearing. John Drinkwater is disappearing when I toggle it.
And I'm toggling it and it's doing exactly what David said.
Okay, is this a platform issue? Is this a platform issue between Windows and Mac, maybe?
I'm on a Mac. I'm on a Mac, David.
I'm on a Mac too.
Lois as well, I believe.
Yes.
So let's be a little more scientific about this. I'm going to ask everyone to lower their hands for a moment. And okay, No, Haspic, you put your hand back up again. Okay, thank you. Okay. Wait, John, put your hand down. Are you able to put your hand down? All right, there we go. Okay. So now I'm going to turn my Robert, are you in, do you have non-video participants hidden?
I do.
Okay. So your non-video participants are hidden. I'm going to turn off my camera. Now I should disappear from your gallery view.
You have disappeared.
Now I'm going to raise my hand.
And you're back.
Am I back for you, Robert?
No, and I know what it is now. You appear on my second screen, but you don't appear in my gallery view.
Well, that's not right because you're in my gallery view.
So what do you have on your second screen, Robert?
I have you now.
No, I mean, what criteria do you use to put them on your second screen?
Active speaker.
Oh, active speaker here.
Right, it's active speaker, but I don't jump back into your gallery view when I did that?
No.
So I'm gone from your gallery view.
Gone.
And now I should be back in your gallery view.
For me, you are. For you, for me, you are. I've only got one screen. I'm in gallery view. And when you put up your hand, David, I see you in my top left.
So if David does the raise and lower hand without speaking, he won't jump into gallery view, and maybe then Robert can see what he sees.
No, he will. No, I will, because what happens is when you raise your hand, you move to gallery position 0-1 or 0-0, whatever that is. Yeah.
But he had speaker as the criteria.
No. We're talking about two different things. So you're talking about his second Zoom monitor, which is always going to be active speaker, or unless you pin someone there, or there's a screen share or something. But we're talking about, am I showing up in the gallery? So I now turn my camera off. I'm going to mute myself so there's no audio, just to be double sure, and I'll raise my hand.
I see you.
And he's in the gallery.
I see him in gallery. Oh, yes. I also saw Andre come and go as he put his hand up. And
so there's something with Robert.
No, Robert, it's Robert.
Robert, did you see me appearing and disappearing?
What version of Zoom are you on, Robert? And what version is David on?
I'm checking my version now. Just give me a second.
And could it be that he's using a different kind of Zoom, like ZoomOS or something?
No, I'm using the vanilla client, and it is 6.15.
Oh, you have an update to 6.2. I don't know if that's the thing, but I'm on 6.2.
Yeah, but you update before the update comes out.
I do update. I do. It's a problem. It's really interesting. I don't know why you're seeing that.
But are you on the vanilla client?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Very interesting. Hasmuk, yes. Now we're back to you.
Explain to me the concept of unique speaker in ZoomISO and how would one utilize that function?
Sure, I'll give it a shot. So in this screen, you've got here. Actually, wait, I can. In this screen, you've got me and some guests. Now, in a moment, you will see my camera again. Now, see how my camera popped up there? Now, it's not the same camera as this right here because I'm using virtual cameras and stuff like that. But if you imagine for a moment that the camera in the bottom right of my screen is just my head again, I'm an active speaker over here. You don't want me also, over there, right? So what unique speaker does is it looks at who has been pinned somewhere, who has been chosen or selected from ISO or from some other tool like Ecamm Live, for example. If there's an active camera of that person, it will not include them in, for example, in the tiles example, in this round robin. It will because that would, if they're in two places, they're not unique anymore. Unique speaker means you only see every person once. Did that make I think that's
It
what
kind of makes a unique sense, but I'm not uniquely convinced.
So
makes sense.
maybe I can try as well.
Yeah,
So
please.
I think the example Andy gave was kind of, imagine you have like two hosts of a show, and then you have a question answer round, and you only want to have all the people shown except for the hosts in this unique speaker window. So that means when every output you have pinned in ZoomISO with a person, that gets excluded from the Zoom tiles appearance. And so then you can have like the two pinned hosts, and you can have the unique speaker window, and you will never have the hosts showing up in this window when they speak, because usually as active speaker, they would be shown in the active speaker window as well. But this gets excluded from this unique speaker.
Thank you. That
So
made a lot more sense.
It's a pretty fail-safe way to have any participant other than the pinned outputs in ZoomISO as like an input to your show.
Okay, so right, because I'm looking at it from a perspective of just ZoomISO, ignoring Zoom tiles, and just looking at how I would use unique speaker, and so that's where I'm trying to get my head around.
Yeah,
but
you could use the same thing. So that means you have your two hosts, and then you have one window that shows whoever you want these to have these hosts talk to, and if you would put an active speaker window there, they would appear in this window as well. But in the unique speaker, they will never appear in this window, and you can have in one ZoomISO show like 3 outputs, 2 pinned hosts, and 1 active speaker without these 2 pinned hosts, or how many pinned hosts, whatever.
Okay, gotcha. Thanks.
That makes sense. Kind of.
Kinda.
Okay.
And I only understood this. I only understood this today, because yesterday I didn't get it. I watched it twice. I didn't get the point, but today I understood it.
Maybe I'll get it tomorrow.
Let me take another stab at this. So you've got 2 hosts. Okay. Well, you have a gallery. You have your gallery. So let's just say that down here, you've got all your different. This is just a Zoom meeting. You've got all your different people in Zoom. From this meeting, you've got 2 hosts. These 2 people are hosts. Okay. They are going to be speaking. You also have from ISO. So you've pulled them out of using ISO, these 2 guys from your Zoom meeting. You've also pulled out an active speaker from ZoomISO. The active speaker is going to pull whoever from this meeting is speaking. The problem is you don't want these 2 people to be pulled in here because you already have them in your production.
Gotcha.
So what unique speaker does is it says, we're going to choose whoever's the active speaker from down here minus, it's like a mix minus in many ways, a video mix minus for these 2 people.
Okay.
Or however many people you have set as outputs.
Right.
In
Yeah.
ISO.
Or however many people you have. Exactly. Yeah. Awesome. Your video in this layout, you are flipped. I was flipped. Oh yeah, I was flipped. Sorry, that was, I got a private. You know why? Because here, I'll tell you why. Because when I am doing this, and my drawing is over here, and so I want it to look like I'm actually looking at the blackboard. Whereas if I didn't flip my video, I'd be looking like this, and that just looks dumb to me. Like I'm looking the wrong way.
Your shirt gave you away today.
I know. Because I can't wear something with letters on it. Yeah.
Unless you work for Ooze instead of Zoom.
Is this our friend that we should not be letting in again? I forget. Yeah. Someone else had their hand up before. I forget who it was. Robert, did you want to? Was there something else you had?
I did want to say something, but Lois has left, so I don't. Oh, you are here.
I haven't left. I was just implementing my method of being here, even if you don't want to look at people with their videos off.
Okay, I just wanted to congratulate you on asking Andy such a clever question as to how he gets to look so good.
Just a good-looking guy. What are you gonna do?
He is a good-looking guy, but he's also got a good setup there.
Yes, he does. I remember when he first, I guess he moved or changed his, and I saw the video, those TVs behind him, and it looked real. It looked like windows to me, and he told me they were just windows, just monitors. James, how are you, sir?
I'm okay. Let me lower my hand. I don't know if you've covered this. I'm a little confused about one of the new Zoom update features, and I don't know exactly what it's called, but we've run into like the shared access permissions again, and this happens from time to time with the Zoom plugin for Google Workplace. And so there's some update that says something like people not in your account. I don't know. Frank, do you know what I'm talking about?
Sorry, I was doing a work email. I wasn't really listening. What's the question?
So it's a new feature, and I don't know exactly what it is. But it has to do with, that integration of Zoom and Google Calendar. So the Zoom plugin for Google Workplace. You can schedule in your Google Calendar, and you can set alt hosts. You can set attendees in your environment. But there's something new about people not in your Zoom account.
No, I'm sorry. I don't know.
So you didn't play with that. Okay.
I'm not a Google school, and I don't have Google Calendar attached to my personal or to my Zoom account.
James, are you still having problems with sync issues?
Well, it is kind of a sync issue to a degree. So I don't know if anyone else has used this, but we are a Google campus. And so our Google admins have already configured in the Zoom plugin for Workspace. So people don't need to install that part. All they can do is sign in and sign out of it. And so basically in your Zoom settings, very bottom of your settings, you can allow scheduling privileges to another user. And I don't know if people are familiar with this, because it's more of a something that Frank would be familiar with, because you're dealing with a big group of people. And so then that allows me, when I have scheduling, I could give scheduling permissions to Frank if he's in my association, and that also lets you kind of transfer meetings between people, because if you have scheduling permissions of another person, you can then look at their meetings, and then when you see the meeting, you can then associate that meeting with you as opposed to them. So it's kind of a transfer way too. But so you have a lot of people who schedule for another person. I don't know, this might sound boring to many people. But I think when I was looking at you, Dave, because I'm like, David looks bored.
No, I use Google Calendar every single day. I live in Google Calendar.
And one thing that happens a lot of times is this plugin creates it signs people. I don't know if it signs them out or there's something that gets corrupted with it. And the way to fix it is you sign out of that plugin and sign back in, and that sign back in kind of reestablishes the connection. And so sometimes you'll see meetings that say, Google unsynced meeting, so I know that sounds boring.
No, the same thing happens with the Outlook plugin for Zoom. It gets unsynced or corrupt or something, and they say do the same thing with the Microsoft plugin, sign out of it, sign back in, or uninstall it and reinstall it.
And it's a little different for the Zoom Chrome extension. As an extension that works differently. It's not dynamic, so with a plugin you can change like whose meeting it is. The extension, once you've set a whose meeting it is, you can't switch it and keep the same meeting ID. Sorry, this might be boring, but I would see if anyone understood the new.
Do you ever go on the Zoom community forum? I'm sure there's other people who've run into this issue there.
And I'll say sometimes, so I know that there's an issue with our sub account. And so we have people that are in the healthcare version of Zoom. And we do have an integration between our healthcare and our others. So like if Robert is in the healthcare version, I can set him as an alternative host. But if we do scheduling permissions, that plugin has issues switching between us. Sorry, I was better not prepared.
No, I think you explained it well. Just I don't know the answer. Scheduling privilege is super useful. Anyone, like you said, that's in your Zoom account, you can find them just the way you find them to make them an alternate host. You can also give them scheduling privileges, which allows them or you, depending on which direction it's pointing, or bidirectional if you do both, to schedule on behalf of someone else. So executive assistants and department people who need to schedule for somebody else can use that tool, and you can revoke their privilege if you no longer want them to be able to schedule on your behalf. How that ties into the Google integration or extension, I don't know exactly. And then you're adding more complexity with the HIPAA, with the special Zoom for healthcare, because they have them for government and healthcare, and they're probably similar, but they probably have their own circumstances.
John, did you want to jump in?
I was just going to say, we are in fact a Google campus with Gmail for all our faculty, and we have Zoom, and we have Zoom for all our faculty and accounts for our students, which are the free accounts. And where we have problems, typically our faculty members or students who have multiple Zoom accounts, multiple Google accounts. They might have their Google University account, and they may have a personal account that they used, and sometimes they've linked it and shared them. The other is that our faculty, when they move from, we didn't have as much problem during COVID, but now that they're back on campus and using rooms, and so they log in to do something and they get logged out from their home machine, then they get back and they're not logged in appropriately to their Google account, and they're in the Zoom and they aren't seeing things, or vice versa. So it seems to be working very well if it's a person who has just the university Google for work, or ours is Google for education, and the Zoom account that's been affiliated with it. That seems to be clean. It's when you might have a user that's moving between accounts, and even on my accounts that aren't connected at all with Zoom on Google, that I have linked to other things, every once in a while Google just says, hey, you need to re-authenticate, or we're just not going to talk back and forth. I have a calendar programming that about every 2 weeks I have to re-establish that I want that program to have permission to access my Google space.
James, from what John was saying, it's almost sounding like to me that it could be Google themselves just timing you out, timing that person out, and making sure that there is again just security from their end and making sure that you resync, right? Again, the only other thing I can think of, and again, this is me taking a stab in the dark, might be related to some sort of firewall related issues. If everybody's behind the school firewall or the large enterprise firewall, they may be causing a bit of grief with the synchronization between Google's cloud and the internal users. Again, that's me taking a really deep dive into the IT world of firewalls. But again, if it's only happening to a small few, then it could be user error. If it's happening to a lot of people, then it might be infrastructure. That's where I would go with that.
I mean, there is I've not seen an instance where it works to do the shared permissions across our sub accounts. You can set the alt host to the sub account, but you can't use the plugin to switch that. And
Yeah, you just added more complexity. Most people here probably don't know what sub accounts are. But the other thing I was thinking, I read about something about this a while back, and I don't know if it pertains to Google for Education or just vanilla Google, but Google, I think, still has this concept of your primary account, like especially if you have multiple accounts. So the reason I'm thinking of this is because what John said. Google has something called a primary account, and if it's not what you think it is, that can also cause issues.
If you want to be
so
really
person that-
causing trouble, be an admin on two separate Google domains, one for work and one for education, and have double authentication. Logging in sometimes when I'm not hardwired in with the machine that's been identified, but I'm out on the road, I have to borrow somebody's machine and do something. I get to tears at times. What can I say?
You can say that the security system works.
Yes, I should be happy that I'm not our accounts are not taken over by various people trying to take control of the university. Of course, I'd love if anybody could control my university. Our fellow university folks here know what a hard ship that is to steer.
I do have to ask this though. So this is just kind of going back to when Andy was in and I missed that part. So when he talked about the Klingon, Robert, do you have any interpreters that actually interpret Klingon? Or I'm not sure how much of that happens in the translation world. Or have you ever had someone speak Klingon?
I'll be very honest with you. Yesterday during office hours was the first time I heard that word.
Not a big Star Trek fan, are you?
Nope. Nope.
So there's the official answer to that, James. So basically, I guess what you're seeing in that is there truly a Klingon setting within Zooms? I think that was Andy actually putting in a custom name for that specific channel, and Robert agrees with me on that.
That's exactly what he did.
No, but I think of it like sometimes where a person speaks French and Italian, and the Italian can't understand the person who speaks Italian, and the French person can't hear that. So like they have to talk to each other through Klingon, so that they're both struggling through it.
They tried that trick in Europe where they tried to come up with a universal language for all Europeans. It failed.
Not Esperanto, something else?
Esperanto failed.
I thought it was supposed to be for the whole world, not just for Europeans.
It seemed a bigger failure.
Yeah, I thought this as well. I thought it was universal.
My understanding was that it started off in Europe. Whether it was adapted by other people in the rest of the world, I don't know. But it failed as a project in Europe.
Some of us still know Esperanto.
Some of us know Latin.
Asbeth, go ahead.
Yeah, this is something completely off the wall. I pinged David during the week in Discord about using a circular picture-in-picture. So in my production, I use super sources to show the presenter and the slide that they're showing. But showing them in a super source occupies too much of the real estate. And I was hoping to use a circular picture-in-picture. So I asked a couple of weeks ago ChatGPT how to create a circular picture-in-picture with an ATEM, and it gave me all the steps, and I succeeded very nicely without pinging anybody else for help. The only problem I have is that if my camera is framed on myself as the speaker, and then I switch to the picture-in-picture, the picture is actually zoomed in on my face, so my face appears much larger than the proper 16:9 frame. So I asked David how he does it. Is he using a feature in Ecamm to create that picture-in-picture, I assume? And how else can I achieve that? Because MixFX does not support any other kind of super source except rectangulars, whether they're squares or 16:9, it's fixed. Any suggestions?
Go ahead, Robert.
I was just going to say you'd have to build something with an alpha channel and stick it onto the ATEM and have a super source. I can't. I don't do that, but that's the way I would look at doing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You
Again,
can do this with an upstream key and like a pattern. The ATEM does support this. It's not that comfortable like doing a super source, but you can actually program a macro to do this.
That's exactly what ChatGPT told me to do. So I modified one of the upstream keys and used one of the shapes, and they give you circular as one of the shapes. And so it works. I mean, I can assign it to a macro, or I can assign it to a button on the Stream Deck. So to bring it up is not a problem. The problem is that the camera is framed on my shoulders and maybe the head is, that's perfect. But when I bring in the circle, the circle covers the entire face. Yeah.
I believe you can zoom in and out in the upstream key. I'm very sure.
Oh, okay.
I don't have my ATEM software control open right now.
Oh, you can
I'm very sure
zoom
you can zoom in and out. Yeah. So
Okay.
so essentially, as you have much more screen information, you can really zoom it down. I think you can zoom it down quite a lot.
Okay.
Yeah,
Search
and
in the
Hasbach, the
ATEM
other-
software control.
Yeah,
Or
and has
use a
the
mix
other
effect.
way of doing it
Yeah.
too would be to actually make yourself wider in your main 16:9, and then you will be larger in your circle, right? So
Yeah,
you're
yeah.
probably a tighter shot on your camera. You don't need to be that tight of a shot anymore if you're going circular.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. Got you.
So either way.
What about having a second camera that you can use for this particular feature?
Exactly my thought that I had. I was looking for a more elegant exit than using a second camera. But I think what Andre is saying about if I can include in my macro to zoom out, that would be probably the more elegant solution.
Right. Yeah,
this.
the
And I think
only
it's-
difference. Go ahead, Andre.
I think it's the DVE that you have to use in the upstream key section. It's the DVE, which stands for digital video effect, and with this tab of the upstream key, you can manipulate nearly everything of your frame, and then you take the source of your camera as the upstream key source, then you manipulate in the DVE section how you want to have it, and then you can turn it on and off with the upstream key on and off, so to say, and that's you can record as a macro and bring it in there. And you can also use the flying key feature, which is you could have it flying from exactly. But it's the DVE that you have to use.
Yeah, Hesmak, the reason that I was saying to zoom yourself out more in a wider is so that you don't have to use the digital, because again, you're digital zoom, right? So you want to stay away from digital zoom as much as possible, because it start adding artifacting around your face too.
Well, if this works, I'm going to send that cookie that was going to be sent to our guest tonight. So, Andre, you'll get a cookie in the post.
Thank you, sir.
Good job, Andre. Lois is coming up with the cookie idea for everybody. So Andy's getting cookies, Andre's getting cookies. Who's next? As everybody gets all quiet.
It's Christmas time nearly again, right?
Oh, the Christmas cookies. Is that where we're going with this?
Yeah,
I
was shocked. I was shocked that actually, I think at mid of August, there was all the Christmas cookies that you see in all the shops there, and it was really hot outside, and inside there was all the Christmas cookies you know from every time of Christmas. Really disgusting.
Yeah, I was shopping, as a matter of fact, yesterday, and I saw Christmas decorations now being sold, and I also saw Halloween candy being sold. And yes, we're September. Well, again, Halloween makes sense because it's a month away, but I did see the store actually starting to bring out Christmas decorations already. Okay.
Good night, everybody. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Hesmak. Take care. Thanks for the meters as usual.
See you, Hesmak.
Appreciate it.
Bye, Hesmak.
Doesn't Christmas come earlier in Canada?
Do we really want to go down that road?
It does because we're closer to the North Pole.
Santa hits you first, huh?
That's our story. We try to keep it, we try to stick to that. Again, depending on if you actually follow him using the NORAD
Santa tracker.
Yeah, NORAD Santa tracker.
So there's a real thing, a real tracker that will show you what migrating birds are flying over your space in the middle of the night. And 5,000 of these and 10,000 of those and one Santa maybe. I haven't seen that yet, but who knows. I always figured it was just because your days get shorter faster.
Our days get shorter faster.
You're close. Yes, the closer you are to the equator, the longer your days are. In the middle of winter.
Well, it's almost Thanksgiving. I mean,
yeah, it is not.
It is for us.
It is for us.
Oh, that's early too, huh?
Depends where you're.
That was part of my joke, because I know that Thanksgiving comes earlier in Canada. So
when is Thanksgiving in Canada?
Every third Wednesday every month.
Every third Wednesday every month. Oh,
that's right.
That. Okay, I hope that means that y'all are sending me cookies.
Oh. See, now Lois wants cookies sent back to her, even though she's sending cookies to Andy. I understand. So are the cookies we're sending to Lois the cookies she's sending to Andy? We're still trying to figure that out.
The question is, if a cookie is sent from Canada to the US, is it 25% less?
Possibilities are endless.
Well, there is the Santa tax where Santa takes a nibble out of everything. So that would make the cookies 25% gone.
That would be true. That would be true. And it depends on how much the tariffs will be this week between Canada and the US as well.
You guys, you are so silly. It is so much fun to hang out with you. But I'm going to go now and go find some lunch and see you later.
Bye, Lois.
Bye.
Great having you as usual every week. Any other questions? Mr. John Drinkwater, you've been a very quiet boy. Anything up new and exciting? Oh, going once? Going
No.
twice? All right. So James, yes, so the sync issue, I would myself have the IT guys check in and make sure they're not blocking any traffic necessarily coming back from Google. I'm assuming that everybody's behind the firewall when they're doing that, or VPN into your corporate.
I
when they're
did
doing
get a
that?
response from Zoom.
Okay.
And I think part of this is when I mentioned this earlier, that our Google admins have already set this plugin for all users. And so they've done their Google admin part to add this to all the users. Which means that the users can't back all the way out and reestablish. All they can do is sign out and sign in on the plugin, because their solution was to go to the marketplace.zoom.us apps, whatever, and that goes to a Google page that you have to sign in as administrator. And so there's some part there that it sounds like our Google admins need to kind of unauthorize everyone and reauthorize them, and then that would mean everyone has to sign back in and they'd have issues, and that, so I don't know if that's doable. And does that make sense?
That does. I'm just trying to figure out
Because what he said was,
mhm.
watching the video that I provided, I can confirm that the issue lies with the shared access permissions, as you mentioned. In this case, the user is not seeing the authorization screen because she has already authorized the sign-in process. She is following and not requesting new permissions. And as I said, I think it's this kind of catch-22 with the big organization, and that user, our users can't go in and out of the marketplace. Like they can't sign in and sign out. That's already signed in, and this is what you get. And you can say, yes, I want to use these 3 apps that you're allowing us to use. But they can't do more than that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a feeling you can confirm the team that admins Zoom isn't the same team that admins Google for your school, probably, right?
Oh, no way.
Yeah. So you need to get both of those teams in the same room at the same time and have a conversation. I have the same problem. I admin Zoom for my school with some other people's help, but we're not the IT department, and we have to go through them for certain things, and they're not paying attention to Zoom unless we raise an issue and say, hey, you need to change a setting or something otherwise. And then there's a whole bureaucracy about why do you need that setting changed? Is it safe? And there's, it can be a pain.
And we will have to meet. We'll have to meet on this next month for the first Thursday of every Tuesday, before we can actually get that on the schedule for consideration.
So like where I'm at is there's calendar and email Microsoft. We're a Microsoft school, so there's an integration for Microsoft to tie your calendar into Zoom. And I can turn it on in my Zoom admin panel, but when users go to use it and they try to use it, it won't work until the Microsoft admin for my school also allows it in the Microsoft Office 365 admin panel. And I have no access to that. So I feel like you're probably stuck in one of those kind of situations.
Yeah, the other thought that I have too, James, is that again, because you have the two different, you know, if the IT guys take care of your Google related things, so be it. Then you have, you know, whoever else is taking care of your Zoom stuff. Again, the two different scenarios there too. The other thought that I have is that it almost feels like to me that, and again, I'm taking stabs at the dark here because again, this is a bit of a weird situation because if it's in sync, it should stay in sync. And what you read to me, it sounds like as far as the sync being lost, we're not sure if it's Google that's losing it or if it's Zoom that's losing it. What you read to us, it almost feels like Google says, well, you already synced to me. Why are you syncing again? That's what it almost feels like.
Well,
Did I understand that when you read that?
See, the one thing is this particular user I know has other Google accounts. And so some of those
Okay.
Google accounts are maybe not in our Google account, and you know they're switching users or whatever. And so I think the update that Zoom did that allowed this other thing to happen, and I don't know what that thing is. I'd have to read through the thing. Because I didn't understand it anyways. Like that's why I can't really explain it very well because I didn't actually read it.
Do you remember what it's called?
Huh?
Do you remember what it's called?
I don't know. I know I saw mention of it when I did the login log out.
Yeah, because it almost feels like now again, James, just to understand the way that your infrastructure is configured, is everybody behind? Is everybody using a corporate internet connection? Or are you allowed to be offsite and everybody has independent internet connections?
We're allowed to be offsite.
Okay, so
But
this
they're-
happens to this person. Is this person offsite or onsite?
This person is offsite, and I know the one thing we did try was they were. See, they're even slightly more. Are we still online? Yeah.
Yes.
I don't want to
If
go
it's
further on that.
yeah, understood. If it's private stuff, we can talk outside of YouTube. But okay.
Well, I'll just say something very general. If something was misconfigured, like permissions or something, you would think it would impact every user in the organization. If it's impacting a specific user, then what's different about that user that's different than the whole organization? That would be one place I would start looking.
Yeah, because I know that Chrome will do an awesome job of not switching accounts properly. It's just infamous for that. Example would be I have my personal account and I also have our corporate account, which again, we do, like David said, we are also Google based. But every time I switch out of my corporate account to my personal account, there always is always an issue for me in one way or another. It's either I don't get calendar properly, I don't get my YouTube subscriptions properly, or I do get in my email, but I get everything else. And again, because a lot of that is sometimes Google and their cookies and caching within the browser, you almost have to have, and this is a bad example, but you can almost go there too, is that have this person use Chrome for, let's say, Chrome for work and Edge for personal, because Edge is the Chromium based tech configuration in the background, and it should be able to also connect up to Google. So separating, having two physical different browsers, then you can have Edge doing his or her personal based stuff and have her stay in him or her stay in Edge for personal, and have corporate where they log into Chrome. I do know that this does cause a bit of grief. This is just Google based. Never mind the integration of Zoom on top of that.
Right.
Does that make sense, James?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I know that there is some specific, KB known thing that talks about people who have multiple Google accounts and having issues with the shared access permissions. And I don't know if that has been fixed in any way or what.
Fixed.
And
Yeah,
I know
but fixed where? That's the important part. Fixed by who? Google or fixed by Zoom?
Well, I think essentially it has to be fixed, but it's when you have that configuration in Google, it doesn't pass the information it needs to for Zoom.
Right. But again, that could be, as I was saying, because again, Chrome, the plugins of Chrome are not based on necessarily your account. They are based on the browser. Right. So if you're already logged into a Zoom plugin based on a Chrome browser, is it going to be smart enough to actually know that you're switching accounts? Maybe, maybe not. Right. So that's why I'm saying if you isolate the two, where you actually have him or her personal account in Edge, and have the Zoom plugin in Edge, and have Chrome where the person logs into the corporate stuff there, and the Zoom plugin in Chrome, because they will be different because they're two physical different browsers then at that particular point, then to see if that actually then isolates it, because it could actually come down to the Chrome plugin, which again, Edge understands how to use Chrome plugins as well.
Well, I think some of it becomes problematic just that their Google account, they have multiple Google accounts that I don't know. I don't get it. So,
Well, let me ask you this. Is your Zoom account an enterprise account or a corporate account?
yeah, I mean, education.
All right. So do you have a Zoom account rep?
Yep.
Okay. What I would do is contact the Zoom account rep and say, look, I'm having this problem. We're having trouble figuring it out. Can I have a few?
And I don't talk to them.
Oh, well, get whoever.
That's another tier who talks to them. And so, I mean,
okay, well, whoever talks to them, say, I've done this with Zoom with my account rep. I've said, I'm having a problem. I'd like some time with a Zoom engineer. Here's the problem. I can send you more details if you want them. And quite often, Zoom's pretty generous. They'll give you an hour or two of the Zoom engineer's time. If you can bring the Google admin and the Zoom admin to the meeting, describe the problem in advance, and by the time, so that you don't have to explain the problem in the meeting, because let's say you only get an hour, I would send the Zoom engineer all the information in advance so that when you actually have the meeting, the Zoom engineer can talk about, like, okay, Google admin, do you have these settings enabled or disabled? Zoom admin, do you have these settings enabled or disabled? But the Zoom engineer can actually, sorry, my Google Home just heard me. The Zoom engineer can actually look at your account settings, so he probably won't have as many Zoom questions, but he won't be able to look at the Google settings for your campus. But if he knows what the problem is, he may have already run into this problem before. It might be common. He may be able to tell you the answer in 5 minutes, or he may say, give me a day or two, I'll look into it. But all this guessing and looking around and trying 20 different things seems really inefficient. Why not, put in a proper ticket, start an escalation process, and get the people who are experts at this to help you solve it.
Right. And if we're still in YouTube, I can't mention the secondary thing.
That's not a problem. That's actually a good way, Frank, for us to actually wind up our show this week. Thank you, Andy, for coming in and showing us all the new toys that we had in. So now we have new add-ons coming. I guess it will be, well, he was showing us the beta. So officially, it looks like this will be coming within a few days, if not early next week. That the versions that he mentioned, if you didn't get to see it and you just joined us late, definitely check out Andy in the beginning of the video. And he went through all the different add-ons or the new features and fixes that he has now done with all the, shall we call it, the liminal products that he takes care of, which is ZoomISO, ZoomOSC, and ZoomTiles. Okay, so on that note, thanks everybody for joining us this week. Don't forget to, as they say in the YouTube verse, like and subscribe to the channel. And we'll see everyone next week for another Zoom Test Kitchen.